Candid conversations with an Epic consultant. How to become an Epic consultant. This is our follow-up video with Vince, where we answer some questions from the viewers from the previous YouTube video. We talk in detail about the technicalities of what an Epic consultant is. Vince defines the role for us. We talk about the steps that need to be taken so that one can become hired as an independent consultant. Then towards the end of the video, we'll answer some specific questions from some of our other viewers. Awesome. Hey, Vince, thank you for joining us today for our follow-up call about how to become an Epic consultant. How you doing today?
Yep, no problem. Good. You?
Good. All right. So like we promised the viewers last time, if they have any questions, that we would reach back out to you and answer some of the questions. So let's jump right in. So this was the previous video. If you guys haven't seen the video yet, just click in the link below. But let's jump right in. So from the previous video, we talked about how to get Epic certified. And Vince here is a consultant. And so the first question we got from Delane here is that our video wasn't too specific and it didn't tell her exactly how to become a consultant. It did tell our viewers how to get certified in Epic. So what we're going to do now, I think Annette tried to answer the question, that the healthcare facility will first need to sponsor you and then you get hired by a consulting firm. So let's go over that part now.
Yep. So, yeah, I mean, I can kind of give you just a general idea of it. So let's say you're already working at a hospital somewhere. They sponsor you to go get certified. You go, you take the classes, you take the tests, you pass your projects, and then you're certified now, right? And then ideally, I guess what you want to do is after you have some experience working in the hospital and you're good and very familiar with Epic or good enough to become a consultant, you would start to have interviews with recruiters and update your LinkedIn. So what I think I did, or what a lot of people do, is that they'll update their LinkedIn profile, put their certifications on there, share some of their experiences on their on what they do in Epic, and then if there's a opening, a recruiter will reach out to you. Usually the recruiter will reach out to you and they say, hey, I'm looking for, I don't know, something like ambulatory or inpatient or beaker for lab. It's a 3-month contract, 6-month contract. They're looking to do, whatever specific project they're looking to do. And then they'll ask the person, like, is this a good fit for you? Is this something you're interested in? And then it's just, if you are interested in it, you say, yeah. They submit your resume to the company or to the hospital. If the hospital feels like they want to move forward with you, they'll tell the recruiter, hey, I like this resume. Let's get him an interview. You'll typically have a phone interview. And then after one phone interview, they'll tell you, yes, let's move forward, or no, they won't. So if they say, yeah, let's move forward, you guys have a start date. And then that's pretty much it. You're a consultant. So for me, I was at the hospital for a while. I put up my experiences, I put up my certifications, and then recruiters reached out to me. They said, hey, I have a project for a brand new Epic install. It's going to be 2 years. It's going to be located in this state. Just about anything that can give you like an idea to see if you're interested or not. And then I said, yeah, let's submit my resume over there. And then he contacted me back, I think like a few days later or a week later, and said, hey, can you do an interview this Friday at 2 o'clock or something? And then we got on the phone, had our interview. And then about an hour later, my recruiter calls me and says, hey, they'd like to move forward with you. Can you start on this date? And I said, yeah, sure. Let's start on that day. I handed in my resignation, started my new job as a consultant. And that was it. Yeah.
So would you say the difference between a consultant and a direct hire would be when it's when you're a consultant, you absolutely need that third party to help you get the role. Is that correct?
I don't know if you absolutely need to have that third party, but from my understanding, the way a lot of hospitals work is that they already have vendors that they work with. And then the vendors will submit their candidates. So for example, let's say that you're a manager on the ambulatory team and you have a need to bring in 4 consultants because of whatever projects you have going on, right? The manager will typically ask the director, like, how do we bring consultants in here? And then they'll say, create a job posting, and then here are the approved vendors that we work with. When they see this job posting, they will submit resumes and they'll be in touch with you to say, what are you looking for? And they'll let you know, hey, these are the resumes that we have that might fit your need. And then you go and choose from those vendors that resume and then set up the interview. So yeah, in a sense, you almost have to always work with someone, just because like that's kind of how the industry is set up right now. The hospitals have vendors that they like to work with, but I think there are some hospitals or some departments that have their own budget that have the ability to say like, we're going to go and hire our own. So I've been at places where they say like, actually, why don't we keep in touch? We have, if we have future projects, we can hire you, with our own department, instead of going through like the IT's vendor department. And then just to clarify, I think the main difference between a consultant and employee who gets hired directly by the hospital is just your type of employment, right? Like, so W-2 employees hired by the hospital, you're a full-time staff for that hospital. If you're W-2 employee for a firm and then the firm puts you at that place, you're a consultant. So a firm will tell me that, hey, I'm going to hire you as a W-2. You're going to work here at this hospital. This contract is for, 3 months. So yeah, I'm like a consultant, but I'm a full-time employee of that firm for 3 months. So the difference is like your length of job expectations are shorter, and it's really like the employment status. And then you can also do 1099s, which I see it on the list here that we'll talk about it. But that's just kind of like the two distinguishes from a consultant to a full-time employee.
Great. So for the W-2 as a consultant, the difference between the W-2 for a full-time employee would be it's contract based, and it's maybe it's like 6 months or 1 year, right? It's not going to be that you're hired indefinitely. There's a time limit to how long you're going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Time limit wise, no. There's people I've seen that's been extended for like 8 years. There's people that are one and done with the project, and then that's that. So there's no real official time limit. Typically what happens is that like when hospitals are scoping out the work, they'll say like, hey, this project will probably take 2 years. And then after that mark, you'll typically have some type of understanding that like we're behind track, it's going to take longer, or new work has come in and we're going to take longer, or we're finishing on time, and that's that, right? But usually they'll extend you a month before your contract is expired, and then most extensions will either be month to month, every 3 months, every 6 months, and then I haven't really seen people get extended at 1 year at a time. So for me, my extensions in the past have been, hey, we'll extend you for month to month as we need you basis. I've also gotten, we'll extend you for another 3 months. And then I've also gotten, hey, we're going to extend you for another 6 months, over and over. So it's just, it can vary. But no, to answer your question, there's no official set in stone like time limit, but it's going to depend on every hospital and what their situation is.
Got it. But then in order to, I guess, work longer than the 1 year of what your contract says, they'll need to extend your contract, right?
Yeah. You mean like between the staffing firm and the hospital and me, like the 3 parties?
Right. It's like let's say like you're employed full time as a direct employee. You don't need to, like, every year you don't need to go back and say, oh, do you still need me, right? You're there for indefinitely, right? But then when you're a contract-based
Um,
person, then you need to extend the contract. Would that be correct?
yeah, I think technically. So let's break it down a little bit further.
Mm,
There's two types. These consulting firms, just think of them as staffing firms. There's two types. There's one where you're a full-time employee for them indefinitely, like think Deloitte or KPMG. They will send you to the different contracts that they have, and you are just an employee of KPMG. So for example, KPMG has a contract with UCLA. They also have a contract with NYU and all sorts of hospitals, right? And you work full time with KPMG. They'll tell you where to go. You are just an everyday employee. To your clients, you're a consultant, right? So I'm a full time employee at the staffing firm. You guys are my clients. To you and your staff here at UCLA or wherever, I'm a consultant. That's one sphere of consulting, which I personally don't really recommend. There's some benefits to it. You have job stability. You have supposedly off the bench pay or like on the bench pay where basically you're not deployed out to a site. You're still going to get paid even though you're technically not working. So I think there are some pros and cons, to everything. But the other side of consulting is you're very much a temporary employee, but you're employed on a W-2 full-time basis. So let's say I'm at staffing firm ABC and they put me at, I don't know, CHOP, right? Children's Hospital of Philadelphia for a year. When that year is up and we're doing a contract extension, staffing firm ABC will tell me like, hey, you got extended or you didn't get extended. And that's pretty much it. I normally don't have to sign anything new to say like I've been extended. Normally, when there's a signing required, it's because something has changed, like a wage or a role or a position. And I think some people might require a signature just to acknowledge that you've been extended, but for the most part, I don't see a signature required just for extension. Does that help, or let me know if I need to explain
No,
differently?
I think that makes a lot of sense now. I updated the notes. So okay, that's
Hmm.
W-2. Now, can we go over a 1099?
Yeah, so the W-2 status and the 1099s, it's just like kind of how you get paid, taxation, health benefits, etc. So I think most people are familiar with W-2. You're a full-time employee, you work for someone, um, they withhold some taxes for you, and then you get your paychecks every week, every 2 weeks. And then it can come with some benefits. You have like state law benefits, you're employee of the company, sometimes they'll offer you health insurance, et cetera, right? Like mandatory um, time off depending on the state that you're in. Like New York and Cali will have some that are specific for paid time off for like maternity or paternity leave. That's a W-2. The 1099, you get exactly what you agree to, no, and then you take care of your own taxes at the end of the year. So let's say like I work for $100 an hour, and every week I do 40 hours a week. So that means at the end of the week, you give me my $4,000, and that's that. I don't get any benefits from you. There's no health benefits. There's no paid time off. It's just straight up a contractor, right? Like, hey, you come into my house, you look at it, we agree that you'll paint the house for $5,000. When this is done, I'm gonna hand you $5,000. It's just that I'm not gonna withhold taxes for you. There's no strings attached. There's actually another one where you can go corp to corp. It's kind of like a 1099, but then your taxation is a little bit different. You can either do like a S corp, a LLC, and then you'll work closely with an accountant to say like, hey, how should we file our taxes? But even in that instance, yes, you will get your money pre-taxed. So those two are the biggest difference. Um, will you get your money pre or post-tax? W-2 is post, 1099 and corp to corp is pre-tax. And then will you have any benefits? health insurance, etc. W-2 typically will have. 1099, no, you pretty much take care of yourself.
I think with the W-2, they also withhold the Social Security tax, right? I think Social Security and there's something else. I forget.
Yeah, you'll probably want to confirm with an accountant to
Mhm.
confirm, but I think like the idea of the W-2 is that they will pay for the employee's portion of Social Security and I forget something else. It's like FICA taxes. If you're 1099, you kind of have to pay for that yourself. So that's one of the benefit in W-2, if you will. But I believe in the 1099 side, you can write off more or you can capitalize on the expenses more than you can as a W-2. And you know, these are things that you'll want to, anyone listening will want to check with their accountant.
Gotcha. And then the main thing is like think someone who's doing this for the first time needs to make sure they I guess do the math to withhold their own taxes, right? Without spending all their money, because then they'll end up
Yeah,
owing at the
yeah,
end.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that you definitely want to set some money aside so that way you're not surprised at tax time or like you can't pay your own tax bill. That's pretty bad. Um, but yeah, you know, I think the biggest thing is do you need health insurance? Do you need this company to provide you health insurance? So if it's a yes, like, hey, I'm not married, I don't have any other way, it's not affordable for me to buy health insurance on my own, that's probably going to drive you to go the W-2 route. But if you are married to someone and they're giving you health insurance or you're picking it up on your own, then you know, like you're not as bound to the W-2 route and you might be more willing to explore the 1099.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
No problem.
So you mentioned corp to corp, right? Can we go over that in
Mhm.
detail? What does that mean? Is that so? Is corp to corp an option for 1099?
Yeah, you know, I think that you may want to check with an accountant just to confirm because I might be misspeaking, but my understanding is that the 1099 and the corp to corp is kind of the same. The 1099, I believe you can either get your own EIN, employer identification number, or you could give them your social, and then they'll issue you a 1099 at the end of the year, and you'll have to pay that. The corp to corp, I give them my EIN, and then that's that. They don't have to issue me a 1099. I file my own taxes. I do think that they may have to report, you know, where their funds are going, but each EIN is supposed to report their own taxes. So then, you know, like when the IRS gets it, everything matches up. Um, in both instances, whether you're 1099 or corp to corp, you're getting your money pre-tax. So again, on the same example, if you bill $100 an hour and you do 40-hour weeks, you're going to get $4,000 direct deposits or checks. If you do it as a W-2, you probably, you know, get like, I don't know, 3,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So corp to corp, unlike a regular 1099, the regular 1099 you submit your social security number and they I guess they say they pay you directly when they report it to the IRS versus when you have your own entity identification number for your business, they pretty much bill or they pretty much pay your business, right? So it's like a business to business operation
Yeah,
versus a business to you as a person, right?
yeah, like an independent contractor. You know, I think for 1099s, I think they can get their own individual EINs also, just for privacy's sake. They don't have to release their socials out there. But I think that if you're an independent contractor as a 1099, whoever you're contracting with, whether it's the staffing firm or the hospital, they have to issue you a 1099 by, I don't know, March or February, you know, at the end of the year to say like, hey, we paid this person X dollar amount. If you're a corp to corp or EIN, I don't think they have to, but that's my, you know, that's my assumption. So definitely double check, but that's what I remember.
Okay, so we'll just put a disclaimer. We think this is the case, but you have to
Mm-hmm.
check with your accountant. And then I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
I'll just briefly go over LLC versus S corp, and these are like the types of businesses you can have. And this as well, you would probably talk to your accountant for this. Is there anything else you want to
Yeah.
add under LLC versus S corp?
Um, I think the idea of it is that like there's some type of protection, and then there's also some tax designation. So I think like you can have a corp or a LLC designated as a S status. It how you get taxed is differently depending on how you're designated. So so I think that's the most that we can really say or be of any good use, is that when you hear some type of entity, it's usually for protection, for limited liability, and then for taxation, depending on how you've elected. Um, Definitely it's far from like what I know, to be able to give you any meaningful advice.
No, it's cool. It's helpful. And the next question was have an EIN. We talked about that before. It's either yours or your business, right?
Yeah, if you're using your own personal, you're going to give your social, or you can just go and get a EIN for you personally, or for your LLC or your S corp.
Gotcha. And then I've heard, so when you're speaking to the recruiters, they're trying to set you up for an interview and they ask you, how much you want to get paid, if you want to set up as a corp to corp, if you want to be a direct hire or W-2 or consultant. I think they ask you these up front, right? And then at one point,
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
they do ask for workers' comp insurance.
Yeah, sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll want you to carry a insurance package because now it removes the liability away from them. You're a subcontractor. So let's say I'm a full-time employee at staffing firm ABC and I do something and they want to, get reimbursed for it. If I'm a full-time employee, staffing firm ABC is typically the one that they're going to go after, right? Like if I was a hospital, I'm gonna say, hey, I brought you in here, your full-time employee screwed up, now you have to make it right. If you're a independent contractor or even a subcontractor, like a corp to corp, I think like they can say like, hey, we want you to carry insurance because if you mess up, you're not our full-time employee, you're a vendor that we bring in and contract out to, you have to have some ownership. So yeah, sometimes they'll want an insurance, they'll want like a liability, like a $1 million liability policy, and then workers' comp, I think sometimes they'll want it, but usually if you're in a one-person firm and you're the owner and you're the only one, there's really not a need for workers' comp from what I understand. But I think that's a accountant or legal question to get someone to confirm that. You could also even ask the staffing firm sometimes if they'll roll you under their insurance. I've done that before, and that helps you save a few bucks on your insurance premiums.
Cool. So for the last two questions, I'm just going to add that we're not really sure. We'd have to check with the staffing firm, get some legal advice and advice from your accountant, right?
Yeah, yeah. Most
Mm,
staffing firms I've talked to have told me like we want you to carry I think $1 million liability policy.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think it's not too expensive, right? I think it's, let's say you're getting paid like X amount. It's only like a few dollars extra. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I think I've heard from some places, let's say just to make it easy, let's say they're paying you $100 an hour corp to corp. They may add like $5 or $10 an hour extra to pay for your liability, or you can just do this yourself. But it's not something that's too expensive. Would you say that's the correct statement?
Yeah, yeah. I think in general, liability insurance typically isn't that expensive. You can, reach out to some insurance agents, tell them what you're looking to do and what you'll need, and then get some quotes and compare it. But, for what we do in a Epic IT world, I feel like the risk of pain or whatever is less, damages is less. It's not like construction where people get hurt or even die. Um, so you're not looking at that type of risk. I think, yeah, sometimes you could mess up in the system, but it's never to a point where like they'll, I guess, sue you over it or have huge amount of loss. Because like for anyone who works in our field, they'll know that like, like for the most part of what we do, if it goes wrong, it's an inconvenience. Like, oh, my printer isn't working now. Like it's more of like an inconvenience. I don't have the right security access, and now I have to wait a couple of more days to get the better security access, or like my tools aren't working. So I think like when you just look at it as an overall picture, I don't find that the work we're doing to be, I guess, heavily litigated, like versus construction where you're like tearing down walls and people could potentially be like electrocuted or fall off towers, etc. So no, it's not that expensive. Sometimes if you ask to roll under their insurance policy, they might, deduct a few dollars from your hourly rate just to compensate for it. Um, I think that's about right.
Got it. Okay, cool. That makes sense. And then lastly, just to reiterate, these things are these, I guess, kind of complicated things are things you can talk to with the recruiter when you get an interview or before you interview, right?
Yeah, yeah. And every recruiting company is different. Some are big national companies. They'll have certain policies in place, and some are smaller companies, and they might have certain policies in place. So it's not a one size fits all thing. So yeah, anyone who's looking to do it, speak with your recruiter, find out what they're looking for. Do they require insurance policies? Do they offer corp to corp or 1099 or W-2? Like I spoke with some where they'll say like, no, we're actually only doing W-2. And I spoke with some where they're like, you could do 1099s, but it's so complicated that most people do the W-2. So yeah, definitely, speak with your recruiter about it, and you'll probably have to do it every time you work with a new recruiting company.
Awesome. That was really helpful. Thank you for demystifying, what a consultant is, because I think for most of us that just, understand work as W-2 and that's the only thing we understand. It
Hmm.
just sounds like, oh, this consultant, he's like the super cool person. Like, what a sexy name, right? Consultant versus everyone
Right.
else. But you don't really, you don't really know what goes behind that, and you don't really know the benefits of being a consultant, right? Like
Yeah.
getting more take home pay if you don't need to pay for your own insurance, or if you write off certain things, like you working remote, you have a home office, right? So I think
Yeah.
there are a lot of
Yeah.
benefits that go into being a consultant that no one really knows up front, but then you just think like, oh, this is a super cool job.
Yeah. I think that I can give some general I guess like statistics, or maybe, or not even statistics, but general knowledge. Consultants or temporary workers should be paid, or not should be, they typically do get paid more on a hourly rate basis versus your full-time staff. So let's say you're a you're a full-time staff and you make 100,000 a year, right? And you do about um what is it, 20, 80 hours is 40-hour work weeks. Um, right? We have 52 weeks times 40 hours. That comes out to be a person who works full time will work 2,080 hours a year. And then let's say they make 100,000, you divide it by, uh, you know, the hours to find out your hourly rate. That would make $100,000 a year. Someone to have $48 an hour. So we'll just use that as a baseline. If you're a consultant, your hourly rate is going to be much higher, right? Like I've heard of Epic ranges from 60 to 100, maybe even higher as an analyst, maybe even higher as directors or managers, and then maybe even higher or lower depending on how much is the demand and supply of consultants. But yeah, typically consultants, they do make more of a hourly rate than your full-time staff, but their employment is less stable. They go in thinking that I'm here for 3 months and I gotta go out and look for a new job every 3 months, right? So there's some trade-offs. Then there's travel benefits if the consultant is traveling. It's very similar to like traveling nurses.
Gotcha. I think that would make sense to a lot of the clinical staff here, because I expect that to be the majority of listeners. By the way, did you
Gotcha.
say the
Yeah.
consultant rate was 100 an hour? Or,
I think I've heard it can go up there. It could be 60 to 100. I've heard of those ranges. I think lately, as the demand is lower, it's more so been 80s, I guess, maybe 70s. So that will probably put you at like 150, 160 a year. So yeah, if you go and work for a consulting firm full time for them, where like you never have to worry about not having a job, like Deloitte or KPMG or Accenture or something, you're probably not going to make the $100 an hour. Like that makes you have a salary of 200K, and I think for the most part, I haven't heard that from them.
nice. Yeah, really. Thanks for that. That's really helpful. I mean, I think a lot of people are curious about pay, and with consulting,
Yeah.
it varies, right? I mean, you can somewhat like one site can be asking to pay you $51 an hour as a consultant. Another site will pay you 120 an hour. So it's just the range is crazy, and I think it's hard for people to decide what they're going to bill as a
It
consultant.
does vary, but it's actually the range is not that drastic from 50 to 100. Um, I think it's more realistic that if you are newer and
Hmm.
you are maybe more desperate, you might settle for the 65 range, right? Just because of like supply and demand economics. But if you have a whole lot of season, and you have very unique skill sets that are hard to find after, you can probably have more of a leverage or more of a negotiating chip to say like, no, I want, 95 an hour. And then places might be more willing to do it because it's just so hard to find someone with that type of skill set. And then it's really up to the hospital. Like, you might be the only person in the world with a certain set of skill set, and if their budget is 200K, that's their budget. Like, you're not getting 400K. Like, that's that. So those are all the factors in play. But I think generally, you know, 70, $80 is something that I see to be very common in the industry right now.
Got it. Got it. Thank you for the insight. I mean, these are big numbers, right? So I mean, at least for a regular FTE looking at this, it's pretty exciting to look at. So thank you.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, if you always just take the hourly rate and then roughly times it by 2080, you'll get like how much is your annual salary. It's a trade-off though. You're as a consultant, you're most likely not going to have your vacation package, right, or your healthcare package. So let's say that you currently make 100K, you're at $48 an hour, and then consulting is, I don't know, let's say $100 an hour, and you're at 200K a year. So the difference is about 100K between FTE to consulting in that example. And then you take a look at what you're trading off from the FTE world, because there's a lot of benefits that you're giving away, like healthcare, vacation time, sick time, etc. Right? And then you kind of have to just make the judgment call, like, hey, are you willing to trade away these benefits for this much more money? And then yeah, you say yes or no, and you'll go on and decide to take the contract or go into consulting or not. Because like I think money is a big driver for just about everyone, unless you're one of the rich people that money is like unlimited and you're really not going after the money. There's other things to it, work-life balance, because a lot of these jobs are traveling. Pre-COVID, most consulting jobs were all traveling. So that means not seeing your kids, not seeing your family, possibly being in a different area that might not be as fun, right? Because you might not always get to be where you want to be. You might be in the middle of nowhere. And if you're not someone who enjoys being in the middle of nowhere, it's also a trade-off. Not happy houring with your friends after work. So yeah, there's a lot to it. Aside from just the money.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you for that insight as well. I didn't think about that. But I think the
No
good thing
problem.
is I mean, from what I've seen, a lot of the consultant roles are remote now. Would you say, have you seen that as well?
I do see that lately. I don't know, I think most of the work you can do it remotely unless you're someone that has to be on site with like hardware or something. I think it's just on if the hospitals are gonna adopt it. But yeah, I do see a lot of at least part-time remote work. So sometimes they'll want you to come in for a few days or come in for every other week. And then there are other clients that are just like, yeah, we're cool with 100% remote. Like
Cool.
usually you come in for the first week, pick up your laptop, meet the people, get an idea for what the project's going to require from you, and then off you go. You're just remote, and then they'll have touch bases. But yeah, it's been pretty nice. I think hopefully it stays that way, that more and more places are open to the remote because I enjoy that.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Let's move on. So next question here is from Melissa Mathis. She asked if you have any other certifications besides Epic Beaker, because I think you mentioned you did have this in the last interview, right?
Yeah, I had a bunch. I had ambulatory. I had something that they call order transmittal. Um, I had a wisdom certification for dentistry. I think at one point I had like six, and then you're supposed to renew them every year. There's some where like I just never use. I should have renewed them, but I just said like I never use it. I didn't bother renewing it. But yeah, I have a bunch.
Do you have to get sponsored for each one, or do you get
Yes.
sponsored for only the first one?
No, you have to get sponsored every time you go because the
Wow.
way it works is that when you go and sign up to register, the sponsor has to sign off. So when you register for your classes, the sponsor has to sign off.
Wow. So the hospital where you work initially that sponsors you, they're pretty much paying a fortune for you to get certified for each one of these things, right?
Yeah, if the hospital does pay for you, then yeah, I guess they're paying for it. Sometimes there's hospitals that will say like, hey, you take care of your own costs, because they don't want to pay for it, and they're okay with you training, but they don't want to shell out the money. So yeah, it depends on the hospital.
That's not bad either, though, right? I mean, that way they can send more people to get sponsored, but you pay for it. I mean, I wouldn't mind funding the money if I were in that position.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good investment. I think if you're interested in the topic and you want to get certified in it and you're doing it to get more roles or jobs or advancement in your career, I think it's a pretty good investment.
Gotcha. And it probably goes without saying, if you have more certifications, you probably get paid a better rate for your consulting role.
No, not always, because they really don't care. In my opinion, I don't think they
Hmm.
care, right? Like let's say I need a painter to paint my house and he tells me he can fix the plumbing and do electrical work and do the roof too. Like it's kind of like that, like, hey, I think that's awesome. If I need those, I will definitely reach out to you. But for just this paint job, I'm looking in this range, and it's the range
Gotcha.
of how much all painters cost. So it's not always the case. I think if you're gonna do an interview and it's competitive, yeah, you might stand out more because you're more universal, but your
Hmm.
hourly rate will not go up because of it's more so related to the scope of the project.
Got it. Okay. So let's say they need something done with their lab system. They're going to need an Epic Beaker, and they don't care about someone who's good, who has like an Epic Radiant for radiology certification, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they
Got it.
like they might be like, hey, that's nice, but I'm not going to give you $10 an hour more.
Yeah. Gotcha. Makes sense. She asked, "Are you 100% remote?"
Yeah, I'm actually currently 100% remote. I see the next question, pros and cons. Personally, I like the remote. I have a kid now, so I have more of a desire to be at home. If I'm traveling, you're kind of like you're always on the road. Most consultants' lifestyles where you fly out Sunday night or Monday, get to the site, stay in a hotel or I guess Airbnb nowadays, and then Thursday you fly back home, or to wherever else you want to go. So I think it depends on different people and where they are in their lives. Back then, I really enjoyed it because I was staying at a hotel, I was renting cars. It's all reimbursed with the stipend. I was building points. And I was traveling to new cities, and I didn't always have to come home, right? Because like I could have friends who say like, "Hey, we're gonna go to Toronto next weekend," and I'll say, "Okay, cool. I'll just meet you guys there." So instead of flying home, I'll just fly to Toronto or something. So I think when I was at that stage of my life, yeah, I really enjoyed it. There were cons to it too. I slept at an airport before. Um, Sometimes the food sucks. Like wherever you are, it's limited, right? I've done projects where there's like 3 restaurants in town. um and there's boringness to it. You're in the middle of nowhere. um Flight cancellations happen all the time, so imagine that you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday after a week of work, and then the flight cancellation ruins it for you, so then you only really have 2 days now. Well, if you spend one day of that 2 days traveling, you only really have one day to hang out with your family once you get home, right? So my flight on Thursday was canceled. I spent all of Friday traveling, get home, eat dinner, sleep. Saturday we hang out. Sunday I travel back out to get in preparation for next week's work. So yeah, there's real downsides to that too. And then the remote. I mean, for me right now, it's a good thing. I get to be home every day with my family. But I guess there's some cons, right? Because like you also don't have your traveling stipend. So back then, when you're traveling, all your meals and your lodging was free. It was taken care of. So you're actually, in a way, kind of earning more money. You're just being compensated to be there, and they'll pay for your meals. Um, I do miss that sometimes. It's nice to just see different environments. But right now, I definitely enjoy not doing the commute and enjoying the remote.
Got it. That was great. Thank you. The next question, I think we talked about before. She asked how long your contracts typically last. So I think you said like 6 months to 1 year, and then you have to extend it. I think you talked about extending it already, right?
Yeah, yeah. Most contracts will last anywhere, I think, like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. Um, I think the most I've usually seen is that they'll have a 3 month contract or a 6 month. Sometimes you'll see a 1 year project if it's like a new implementation. Those are becoming less now. So yeah, it's around those. And then as far as extension goes, some it depends on the hospital. Some people are good about giving you your extension early and say like, hey, um, you're extended, and some places are bad about it. They'll tell you like a couple of weeks before it. So it really depends. I've had places tell me a month before my contract is over that, hey, you're extended for another month, and then, or like 3 months or 6 months. And then I've had places tell me like a week before the contract is over that, like, hey, you're extended.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a tricky thing. For some people who don't want to have a gap in employment, they start to look for their next contract before the current one ends, right? Like if I don't hear from you that my contract is extending, I'm assuming it ends. So that means I start the interview process, and I'm going to say today's April 22nd. I'm rolling off the project in May 15th. I can start May 17th or something like that. So it's kind of like a balancing act sometimes.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. Do you have support directly from Epic if you need assistance?
Yeah, yeah, you do. Regardless if you're a full-time employee or a consultant at a hospital, you do. They have these things called like TS, technical support, and you're able to reach out to them, escalate issues.
Great. Do you support middleware or do you just support Epic?
I personally don't. I just do Epic. I think I wouldn't be surprised if there are other consultants out there that support middleware.
Gotcha. And I think she means like any HL7 broker or any interface application.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you're an interface kind of person, then yeah, I think it's possible that you'll be supporting middleware outside of Epic, right? Like, so interfaces they'll use like Ensemble or Cloverleaf to do their interface
Hmm.
engine. And I wouldn't be surprised if people have to be well versed in that too or support it. And then I'm sure in other systems, like they might have some expectations for you to know how to do some stuff in that middleware. So if you use Cerner for labs, they might have some kind of expectation for you to know how to do certain tasks in there, or they'll at least teach you, and then you'll have to support it afterwards.
Gotcha. Fair. So we talked about salary for a consultant. Melissa's asking here, what's the starting salary for a new analyst?
I think it depends. Where are you in the country? What's your experience? Do you have other credentialing? So let's say you're an MD or a pharmacist and you're coming in to do Epic. I wouldn't be surprised if you got a higher salary than a non-doctor that came in to do a new Epic analyst. But to give you a broad range,
Hmm.
I've heard new analysts begin their salaries at around 50, 65, and then maybe up to even 70, 75 for a new entry level. I think if you're a doctor or if you're coming with experience in another EMR and you're coming into Epic, or you have some type of justification, you might be able to negotiate for a little bit higher, just because they have to kind of make it worth it for you to come to, right? So let's say you're a Cerner analyst and you currently make 85, and they feel like your skills are really good and it could transfer to Epic. And if you're not willing to leave your current job for less money, then I think they have to at least match or give you some type of reason to change jobs, right? Because then, for a lot of people, it would just hurt them financially to go and take this new position. But yeah, that's pretty much the starting salary that I'm aware of. And this is speaking in New York and I guess a high cost of living area. Um, if you're in other areas, it could probably be lower. I've seen lower salaries. I think for Georgia, one time someone told me 55 or 60 or something as a starting, or it really does depend.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, last question here from Carrie. She says, I work at a hospital as a pharmacy tech, and I've used Epic for 5 years. And now I find out my job sponsors these certifications. Can you tell me which certification I need to become an Epic analyst?
There's not one certification that makes you a Epic analyst. It's Epic, the company, offers certifications in several of their modules, right? So you might have ambulatory for outpatient, orders for your inpatient, ClinDoc for your inpatient. Um, if she's a pharm tech and she wants to stay in pharmacy and she can get the hospital to agree, then she'll probably want to go for the Willow certification. That's the Epic certification for pharmacy. Um, but in my experience, they usually choose a certification for you because it's not really like up to the employee to tell the employer what I want to get my certification in. Most of the time, it's more so the employer saying, I have a need for this role. I'm going to send you for that, and you're going to fill that role. You know what I mean? Like, I have an opening on the outpatient team. I need to fill it. Um, I'm going to send you for the outpatient training certification, and you're going to join the outpatient team. So that's what I've usually seen it. If she has the ability to just go and pick, and the hospital's a-okay with that, then it could be anything. She wants to stay in pharmacy, it'll be Willow.
Got it. And then it would also help if she were to reach out to someone who works for Epic, right, or within the hospital or the IT department.
Um, I don't know. I've never been in her position as a farm
Mhm.
tech, and then I went out for training. Usually the Epic department or the IT department will be the ones who send their staff out for training. If she's coming from the pharmacy department, she may want to reach out to her managers or her directors and find out how she goes about getting certified if they're willing to send her. Um, and then that's what I would do. I would ask my managers, hey, what's the next step before I reached out to IT on my own and asked them to
Gotcha.
send me for certification. Only because like it's kind of weird, right? Like if someone that didn't report to me asked me like, hey, can you send me for training? I'll kind of be like, this is weird. Like I don't do this normally for anyone unless you're part of the IT team and you're under me. So yeah, that's just my initial thoughts on it.
Yeah, and I think the next part is I think the experience is missing here, right? I mean, you can't just go from clinical to the Epic certification, which a lot of IT analysts want to get. So I guess maybe she'd have to work her way into like, I guess first, if she doesn't have any IT training from school at all, then she might have to start at the help desk, something like that, at
No,
the
no,
hospital, and move
well,
her way
well,
up.
it no, you don't always need the IT experience.
Hmm.
It's just that I'm confused on like the current roles and how they're set up. So for her specifically, if she's coming from a pharmacy department, it seems I don't know how she would go about getting certified, right? I think I would ask her manager, and her manager would say yes or no and put her in touch with the right people. But if she were to switch jobs into an Epic pharmacy role, I think it's okay if they don't have a whole lot of IT training. If she's able to show that she can learn the system and support it and do what they need to do, and they hire her, then they'll send her for training on their own.
Got it. All right. Thanks for the advice. I will let everyone know that you've answered their questions, and we'll post this video. Vince, thank you again.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Did spend a good amount of time talking about these topics.
Yeah, no problem. If you ever need anything, just feel free to ask.
Awesome, dude. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.